essentially, in the late 50s, 60s, people really looked at efficient managers, and the other was the area of, the great man, the great person, the Winston Churchill of the world, who really were inspiring speakers that great people that people could look up to and follow. And so the whole leader-follower sort of aspect of leadership was set in place, really, and people really looked at two-dimensional leadership. So you had people that were good managers, but also people that had great traits. So the whole trait theory was very, very important in that period of time. Through research, people then started to raise the issue about successful leaders, however they measured them. They tend to have different. There were different aspects. So what was it that was making the difference? And of course, then people sort of looked at situational contingency. So leaders came to the fore and were successful depending upon the situation that they were in. And the next development was about context. So situation was slightly different to context. Context actually brought in the whole area of not just social change that was happening at the time, but the need for different forms of leadership, aspects of leadership, depending upon the context they found themselves in. So historically, that has been a development, and at the point today, people say, well, one of the big changes that happened, I'll just go back a little way, one of the changes that happened was that people started to talk about the effectiveness of leaders and how you might measure that. And when they started to look at that, they had to go into looking at organisations. And so the big development was when people talked about people like Peter Senge, and then Ogwa and Bassett, who talked about leadership being an organisational quality. And from that thinking, well, they said leadership doesn't necessarily have to be positional, because if you want an organisation to move from where it is now to being more effective, then what needed to happen? How do you need to influence people? Because we're also looking at people build organisations, so we're dealing with organisational theory. That the influence could come from those other than the principal. So people started to use the word leadership rather than principalship, because a lot of that was interchangeable. A leader is a principal, because you wanted to look at other people taking on leadership roles. And the emergence of teacher leadership was in the late 90s. 2000 was a major development in terms of leadership theory, because it said that teachers could have significant impact on their professional communities, more so than perhaps a principal. And that actually moved thinking into the whole area of what they call distributed leadership, and teacher leadership is one of those forms. So the little quote I started with about, which is from Hassett and Laurie, which talked about that leadership is absolutely crucial in terms of organisational effectiveness, but it doesn't necessarily have to be positional. And people, because there were certain things you needed to do to enhance the success or effectiveness of an organisation, people started to use adjectives to put in front of leadership, and so they talked about educative leadership, or transformational leadership, or strategic leadership. So it sort of gave an indication of the sort of things that needed to be happening in that organisation to actually enable that organisation to grow and be be effective. And the understanding of those terms actually changed over time. And so it's one of the best examples of that is the example of transformational leadership, because transformational leadership really grew out of the leader with holding the flag and, changing the world, and the followers coming along and, helping that happen, to that it's more related to the processes that you might put in place to enable people to challenge existing assumptions and start looking at rebuilding culture that transformed an organisation from a particular focus to another focus. And that was an acknowledgement that people don't change people, people change themselves. So you have to capture hearts and minds, and if people then believe in a shared goal, then people will move towards that goal and often leave behind behaviours and assumptions that they might have to produce a better good. So things about moral purpose became important in terms of leadership theory, and so in any situation you may have a combination of leadership, might be strategic, transformational, happening, because that's the sort of processes that need to be in place to move an organisation, be more effective in terms of its performance.